The courtroom cameras captured a moment that would break the internet and destroy a woman's entire life in less than 15 minutes. Brenda Harrison, a self-proclaimed advocate for body positivity and discrimination awareness, stood before America's most feared television judge with the kind of smug arrogance that could only come from years of manipulating the legal system without consequence. Her perfectly rehearsed victim persona was locked and loaded, her fake tears ready on demand, and her binder full of manufactured evidence clutched tight against her designer blazer. She had no idea that she was about to commit career suicide on national television, and that the woman she was about to insult had already uncovered every single lie, scam, and fraudulent lawsuit in her sordid history. What happened next would become the most viral courtroom moment in internet history, shared over 60 million times across every social media platform imaginable. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane and why you need to keep watching until the very end. Brenda didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed on national television. What Judge Judy did to her in those 12 minutes was so devastatingly thorough, so perfectly calculated, and so brutally precise that it destroyed everything Brenda had spent 5 years building. We're talking about a woman who walked into that courtroom expecting an easy $50,000 payday, only to walk out facing criminal fraud charges, losing her 6-figure salary, and becoming the most hated woman on the internet overnight. Before we dive into the complete destruction of the most entitled scammer ever caught on camera, let me tell you about the man whose life Brenda Harrison nearly destroyed. David Samuel was a 32-year-old small business owner who had poured his entire life savings into opening Riverside Fitness, a modest neighborhood gym that catered to working-class families who couldn't afford the fancy corporate fitness chains. For 3 years, David had built a loyal community of members who appreciated his affordable rates, judgment-free atmosphere, and genuine commitment to helping people achieve their fitness goals regardless of their size, age, or ability level. His gym wasn't fancy, but it was clean, welcoming, and filled with people who actually cared about each other's success. Then Brenda Harrison walked through his doors, and David's American dream turned into an absolute nightmare that would nearly cost him everything he had worked for. The incident that brought them to Judge Judy's courtroom seemed simple on the surface, just a dispute over gym policies and alleged discrimination. But what the audience didn't know, what Brenda herself didn't realize, was that Judge Judy had spent the previous evening digging through police databases, court records, social media archives, and surveillance footage. She had discovered a pattern of behavior so disturbing, so calculated, and so predatory that it made her blood boil with the kind of righteous anger that regular viewers knew meant someone was about to get absolutely annihilated on national television. Brenda Harrison wasn't just another difficult gym member. She was a professional victim who had turned discrimination lawsuits into a full-time income stream, targeting small businesses that couldn't afford to fight back in court. Over the past 5 years, she had filed 12 separate discrimination lawsuits against mom-and-pop businesses, collecting settlements totaling $85,000 from people who were just trying to make an honest living. She had perfected her system down to a science. Walk into a small business, deliberately create a confrontation, film herself crying and claiming discrimination, post the video online to destroy their reputation, then demand a settlement that was cheaper than fighting a lengthy legal battle. It was extortion dressed up in the language of social justice, and she had gotten away with it over and over again because she knew exactly how to manipulate both the legal system and public opinion. But Brenda made one catastrophic miscalculation that would prove to be her downfall. She assumed that Judge Judy Sheindlin was just another pushover authority figure who could be manipulated with tears, victimhood, and accusations of discrimination. She had no idea she was about to face a woman who had presided over 20,000 cases during her 25 years as a Manhattan family court judge, someone who had seen every type of scammer, liar, and con artist imaginable, and someone who had absolutely zero tolerance for people who weaponized legitimate social issues for personal profit. Brenda had spent weeks preparing for this appearance, studying Judge Judy episodes, practicing her crying routine, and building her social media following in anticipation of her viral moment. She had even posted on her accounts the night before, telling her 50,000 followers that she was about to educate a TV judge on what real discrimination looks like. She walked into that courtroom with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for her behavior, ready to perform for the cameras and collect another easy payday. She had absolutely no idea that she was about to lose everything. To understand the magnitude of what Judge Judy was about to unleash on Brenda Harrison, you need to understand exactly who this woman was and the trail of destruction she had left across her community over the past 5 years. Brenda wasn't some misguided activist who genuinely believed she was fighting discrimination. She was a calculated predator who had discovered that the easiest targets in America were small business owners who lived in constant fear of being labeled discriminatory. Her method was brilliantly simple and devastatingly effective. She would research local businesses, looking for family-owned establishments without corporate legal departments or public relations teams. Then she would walk in with her phone ready to record, deliberately violate basic policies or social norms, and wait for someone to politely correct her behavior. The moment anyone said anything, she would explode into a carefully rehearsed meltdown, accusing them of discrimination while her phone captured every second for her social media army. Her previous victims read like a rogue's gallery of destroyed dreams and shattered livelihoods. There was Maria's Kitchen, a small Mexican restaurant where the 63-year-old owner had asked Brenda to wait for a table during the dinner rush like every other customer. Brenda accused her of discrimination, posted a viral video claiming she was refused service because of her size, and the resulting 1-star review bombing forced Maria to close after 30 years in business. Then there was Cutting Edge Salon, where a young stylist named Jennifer had politely explained that the salon's chairs had a weight limit for safety reasons and offered to bring in a reinforced chair for Brenda's appointment. Instead of accepting the accommodation, Brenda filmed herself crying about humiliation and fat shaming, sued for $20,000, and Jennifer's boss settled just to make the nightmare go away. The pattern repeated itself over and over. A boutique clothing store that didn't carry her size, a movie theater that enforced a 1-seat per ticket policy, a spa that had weight restrictions on their massage tables for therapist safety. Every single time, Brenda turned reasonable policies into discrimination claims, reasonable people into viral villains, and reasonable businesses into settlement payers. But Brenda's success wasn't just about finding targets. It was about her day job giving her the perfect cover story and the perfect weapon. She worked as a human resources director for a mid-sized corporate firm, a position that gave her just enough legal knowledge to sound credible and just enough authority to seem legitimate. She would throw around terms like hostile environment, protected class status, and systemic discrimination with the confidence of someone who had sat through countless workplace harassment training sessions. Her corporate experience had taught her exactly which buttons to push, which phrases triggered legal fears in small business owners, and how to make even the most innocent interaction sound like a civil rights violation. She had weaponized the entire vocabulary of workplace discrimination law and turned it into her personal ATM machine. Her social media presence was carefully curated to support her grift. She had built a following of 50,000 people who genuinely believed she was fighting against real discrimination, people who would immediately attack any business she targeted without asking questions or demanding evidence. Her posts were a mixture of inspirational body positivity content, screenshots of her lawsuits, and tearful videos about her struggles with discrimination. She had positioned herself as a voice for the marginalized while privately laughing at how easy it was to manipulate people's genuine desire to fight injustice. The incident at Riverside Fitness followed her usual playbook, but with one crucial difference that Brenda didn't anticipate. David Samuel actually had security cameras covering every inch of his gym, and unlike her previous victims, he wasn't going to roll over and pay up just to make her go away. On the morning of March 15th, Brenda walked into Riverside Fitness during the busy morning rush when the gym was packed with members getting their workouts in before heading to work. She went through her usual routine, spending nearly 2 hours moving from machine to machine, deliberately leaving every single piece of equipment dripping with sweat and refusing to wipe anything down despite the clearly posted signs asking all members to clean equipment after use. Multiple gym members complained to staff about the unsanitary conditions she was creating, pointing out that she was violating basic gym etiquette that everyone else followed without issue. After the 5th complaint, David approached her with the same polite, friendly demeanor he used with every member who forgot to follow gym policies. The security footage that Judge Judy would later reveal showed exactly what happened next in crystal clear high-definition video. David smiled warmly and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, I've had a few members mention that some equipment hasn't been wiped down. Would you mind using the cleaning spray and towels after you finish with each machine? We ask all our members to do this to keep things sanitary for everyone." It was possibly the most polite, non-confrontational request imaginable, delivered with genuine kindness by a man who treated every member with respect regardless of their appearance. But Brenda Harrison had been waiting for exactly this moment. The security cameras captured her face transforming in real time from calm focus to manufactured outrage. She had been looking for this confrontation from the second she walked through the doors, and David's polite request was the trigger she needed to launch her well-practiced performance. Within seconds, she exploded into a screaming tirade about discrimination and fat shaming, her voice echoing through the entire gym as shocked members stopped their workouts to witness the spectacle. She pulled out her phone with the speed of a gunslinger drawing a weapon, angling it to capture her face contorted in theatrical anguish while she shouted about how she was being targeted because of her appearance. The other gym members stood frozen in confusion, trying to understand how a simple request to follow basic hygiene rules had escalated into accusations of discrimination. But Brenda was just getting started with her performance. She stormed toward the exit while filming herself, her voice breaking with practiced sobs as she declared that she had never been so humiliated in her entire life, that this gym was clearly a fat-phobic establishment, and that she would make sure everyone knew about the discrimination she had suffered. Within 3 hours, her video had gone viral across every social media platform. She had edited the footage to start with her crying face and David's voice asking her to wipe down equipment, carefully removing all context about the complaints from other members and her 2-hour pattern of deliberately ignoring gym policies. Her caption read, "I was just trying to work out and improve my health when the gym owner singled me out and publicly humiliated me for my size. This is what fat phobia looks like in America." Her 50,000 followers immediately went to war on her behalf, flooding Riverside Fitness with 1-star reviews, threatening phone calls, and demands that David be shut down for discrimination. The local news picked up the story, running segments about gym discrimination without bothering to investigate Brenda's claims or ask for David's side of the story. Within a week, David had lost 40% of his membership as people canceled in droves, afraid to be associated with a business that had been labeled discriminatory. His Yelp page became a graveyard of 1-star reviews from people who had never set foot in his gym. His business bank account dwindled as members demanded refunds and new sign-ups completely dried up. Then came the lawsuit. Brenda filed a $50,000 claim for emotional distress, defamation, and discrimination, knowing that David couldn't afford a lengthy legal battle and would probably settle just to stop the bleeding. But David Samuel wasn't like her previous victims. He had security footage, he had complaints from other members documenting Brenda's behavior, and most importantly, he had the stubborn determination of a man who refused to let a scammer destroy the business he had built from nothing. He filed a countersuit and requested an appearance on Judge Judy, believing that if he could just show people the truth, justice would prevail. Brenda's lawyer actually advised her to drop the case when he learned they were going to television court, warning her that Judge Judy had a reputation for destroying fraudulent plaintiffs. But Brenda's arrogance and overconfidence made her ignore that advice. She had watched dozens of Judge Judy episodes and convinced herself that she understood exactly how to play the TV judge game. She believed that her tears, her social media following, and her corporate HR experience would be more than enough to win over both Judge Judy and the audience. The day of the taping arrived, and Brenda strutted into the courtroom like a celebrity walking a red carpet. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a designer blazer over a flowing dress that she believed made her look both professional and sympathetic. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup applied with the precision of someone who knew they would be on camera, and her leather-bound binder stuffed with printed social media posts, fake testimonials from her followers, and carefully selected screenshots that supported her narrative. She shot David a look of pure contempt as she took her position, already imagining his humiliation and her viral victory moment. Her friend Rachel sat in a gallery with her phone ready to capture content for Brenda's social media, both of them giggling and whispering about how this was going to be Brenda's biggest payday yet. They had no idea that Judge Judy Scheindlin was sitting at her bench reviewing a folder that contained security footage, text message records, financial documents showing Brenda's pattern of settlements, and testimony from her previous victims who had finally found the courage to come forward. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her characteristic no-nonsense directness, her sharp eyes already assessing both parties with the practiced gaze of someone who had seen every type of liar and manipulator imaginable. Judge Judy's voice cut through the courtroom with surgical precision as she addressed Brenda Harrison directly. "Ms. Harrison, you're suing Mr. Samuel for $50,000, claiming he discriminated against you at his gym. Tell me exactly what happened, and stick to the facts." It was a deceptively simple opening, the kind of straightforward question that honest people answer easily and liars stumble over. Brenda took a deep breath and launched into her rehearsed performance, her voice carefully calibrated to sound both wounded and strong. She explained how she had joined Riverside Fitness to improve her health, how she had been minding her own business working out, and how David had suddenly approached her in front of everyone and singled her out because of her size. She paused dramatically, letting her voice crack with emotion as she described the humiliation of being publicly called out, the way other gym members had stared at her, and the devastating impact this discrimination had on her mental health and self-esteem. She pulled out her phone and showed the viral video that had destroyed David's reputation, the one with millions of views and thousands of comments supporting her story. Judge Judy watched this performance with the detached interest of a scientist observing a predictable chemical reaction. She let Brenda finish her entire statement without interruption, allowing her to dig her hole deeper with every exaggerated claim and manufactured tear. When Brenda finally concluded with a trembling declaration about how no one should ever have to experience what she went through, Judge Judy turned her attention to David Samuel. "Mr. Samuel, she says you discriminated against her. What's your version of events?" David's response was simple, straightforward, and completely devoid of the drama that Brenda had injected into her testimony. He explained that Riverside Fitness had a policy that all members were required to wipe down equipment after use, that this policy was clearly posted throughout the gym, and that he had received multiple complaints from other members about equipment being left unsanitary. He stated that he had approached Brenda with the same polite request he would make to any member, that he had never mentioned her size or appearance, and that her reaction was completely disproportionate to a simple reminder about gym etiquette. Brenda couldn't contain herself. She let out an exaggerated scoff and rolled her eyes dramatically, making sure the cameras caught her performance of disbelief. "Your Honor, that's absolutely ridiculous. Everyone knows what really happened here. He targeted me because of how I look, and now he's trying to cover it up with excuses about gym policies." Judge Judy's eyebrow raised slightly, that telltale warning sign that experienced viewers knew meant someone was about to walk into a trap. "Ms. Harrison, are you saying that Mr. Samuel's gym doesn't have a policy requiring members to wipe down equipment?" Brenda's confidence surged as she sensed what she thought was an opportunity to strike. "Look, Your Honor, I'm sure they have some policy written somewhere, but let's be honest about what this really was. This was textbook discrimination, and frankly, with all due respect, you're just a TV judge. You don't understand real courtroom law like actual lawyers do. This is clearly a civil rights violation, and any real judge would see that immediately." The courtroom fell into the kind of silence that precedes devastation. Even the camera operator seemed to freeze, sensing that something catastrophic was about to unfold. Brenda's friend Rachel went pale in the gallery, recognizing too late that Brenda had just committed an unforgivable act of disrespect. David Samuel's eyes widened slightly, surprised that anyone would be foolish enough to insult Judge Judy to her face. But Brenda, blinded by her years of getting away with manipulation and convinced of her own superiority, completely missed the danger she had just walked into. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, and a slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. It was the smile of a chess master who had just watched their opponent make the exact move they had been waiting for. "Just a TV judge," she repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. "Is that what you think I am, Ms. Harrison? Just a TV judge who doesn't understand real law?" Her voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it that could cut through steel. "Let me educate you about this TV judge you're so eager to dismiss. I spent 25 years as a Manhattan family court judge, presiding over more than 20,000 cases. I graduated from law school when you were still in diapers. I've dealt with more real legal issues before breakfast than you'll encounter in your entire lifetime. So when you stand in my courtroom and tell me I don't understand real law, you better have your facts straight. The confidence began to drain from Brenda's face as she realized she had miscalculated badly, but Judge Judy was just getting started. Judge Judy reached for the thick folder that had been sitting on her bench since the beginning of the proceedings, the folder that Brenda had assumed was just standard case paperwork. Now, Ms. Harrison, since you're such an expert on real law, let's discuss your qualifications for lecturing me about discrimination claims. My research team did some very interesting digging into your background, and I think the audience deserves to know exactly who you are. Brenda's face began to change color as Judge Judy opened the folder with deliberate slowness, pulling out document after document that represented years of fraudulent behavior finally coming to light. Let's start with your lawsuit history, shall we? In the past 5 years, you've filed 12 separate discrimination lawsuits against small businesses. 12. And you've collected settlements totaling $85,000 from hard-working people who couldn't afford to fight you in court. The courtroom erupted in gasps as the audience began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't a discrimination case. This was the exposure of a serial scammer who had been operating in plain sight for years. Judge Judy continued her methodical destruction of Brenda's credibility, laying out each previous lawsuit with devastating precision. She described the restaurant owner who went bankrupt after Brenda's viral video destroyed her reputation, the hair salon that paid $20,000 to settle rather than face a lengthy legal battle, the boutique clothing store that closed its doors after Brenda's followers' review bombed them into oblivion. Each revelation hit Brenda like a physical blow, and her carefully constructed facade began crumbling in real time. Her mouth opened and closed wordlessly as she tried to formulate a defense, but Judge Judy wasn't finished. But here's where it gets really interesting, Ms. Harrison. My team obtained the security footage from Riverside Fitness, and I think we should all watch what really happened that day. The courtroom screens lit up with crystal-clear video showing Brenda's deliberate 2-hour campaign of leaving every machine covered in sweat, the multiple complaints from other members, and David's incredibly polite request that she follow the same rules everyone else followed. But the most damning footage came next, showing Brenda's face before David approached her, and the cameras captured something that would seal her fate forever. She was smiling, looking around the gym with predatory calculation, and the footage showed her deliberately checking to make sure her phone was positioned and ready to record before she even spoke to David. The evidence was irrefutable and absolutely devastating. Judge Judy then revealed the text messages that Brenda had sent to her friend Rachel the night before the gym incident, messages that proved premeditation and destroyed any remaining shred of credibility Brenda might have claimed. About to hit another gym tomorrow. These fitness places always cave fast. Easy 50K, then we celebrate. The words appeared on the courtroom screens, and Brenda's face went from red to ashen white as she realized that her entire scheme had been exposed on national television in front of millions of viewers. Her friend Rachel was already gathering her things and quietly trying to slip out of the courtroom, wanting no part of the disaster unfolding before her eyes. Brenda's voice finally returned, but it had lost all of its earlier confidence and contempt. "That's taken out of context," she stammered weakly. "Those messages don't mean what you think they mean. I was just venting to a friend." Judge Judy's expression made it clear that she had heard every excuse imaginable in her decades on the bench, and Brenda's pathetic attempt at explanation impressed her not at all. "Out of context?" Judge Judy's voice dripped with contempt. "Ms. Harrison, you're not a victim of discrimination. You're a predator who has spent 5 years destroying small businesses and exploiting legitimate civil rights concerns for your personal profit. You're everything that's wrong with our legal system, and I'm about to make sure you face real consequences for the first time in your miserable career." The judgment came swift and merciless. Judge Judy ruled completely in favor of David Samuel, dismissing Brenda's $50,000 claim with prejudice and ordering her to pay David $50,000 in damages for defamation, lost business revenue, emotional distress, and legal fees. But Judge Judy didn't stop there. She ordered Brenda to remove every social media post about Riverside Fitness, to post a public apology admitting that she had lied about the discrimination, and to provide the names and contact information for every business she had previously sued so they could pursue their own legal remedies against her. And Ms. Harrison, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of fraud, extortion, and filing false legal claims. You came into my courtroom thinking you'd found another easy mark, but instead you've just confessed to a pattern of criminal behavior on national television. Brenda Harrison's breakdown was complete and total. The woman who had walked into the courtroom with such arrogance was now sobbing uncontrollably, her mascara running down her face in dark streams as the full weight of her situation crashed down on her. She tried to speak, to beg, to somehow salvage something from the wreckage of her life, but Judge Judy's gavel came down with finality. Get out of my courtroom. Next time you want to lecture someone about real law, make sure you're not a criminal. The aftermath was swift and absolutely devastating. Within 2 hours of the episode airing, Brenda's social media accounts exploded with outrage as her 50,000 followers realized they had been manipulated into supporting a fraud. Her employer terminated her human resources position immediately, citing the liability of having someone with her proven pattern of filing false discrimination claims in any HR role. The video of her calling Judge Judy just a TV judge and then getting completely destroyed went viral across every platform, racking up over 60 million views and spawning countless reaction videos and memes. Former victims of her scams began organizing a class action lawsuit to recover the money she had extorted from them over the years. The district attorney's office opened a full criminal investigation that would eventually lead to multiple fraud charges. Her home went into foreclosure as she couldn't pay the judgment against David while also facing the financial burden of defending herself against criminal charges. Every aspect of her life unraveled with the same systematic precision that Judge Judy had used to expose her in court. David Samuel's gym experienced a complete reversal of fortune as the truth spread across the internet. Former members returned and apologized for believing the lies, new members signed up specifically to support a business owner who had been vindicated after being victimized by a scammer, and his story became a rallying cry for small business owners everywhere who lived in fear of fraudulent discrimination claims. Brenda Harrison had walked into Judge Judy's courtroom expecting another easy payday and walked out having lost absolutely everything. Her job, her reputation, her home, her freedom, and her ability to ever run her scam again. The case became a landmark moment in television history, a perfect example of what happens when arrogance meets accountability and when someone who thinks they're untouchable finally faces a force they cannot manipulate. Judge Judy had delivered more than just a legal ruling. She had shown millions of viewers that justice still exists for those brave enough to stand up to bullies and scammers, that the truth always comes out eventually, and that calling a real judge just a TV judge is possibly the stupidest mistake anyone can make. Brenda Harrison learned the hardest lesson of her life, that in Judge Judy's courtroom, there are no easy marks, no second chances for frauds, and absolutely no tolerance for people who weaponize discrimination claims for profit. She had lost everything, and she had no one to blame but herself.